don't deal with this issue a lot, either because you're young enough that your voice hasn't quite changed and you pretty much are singing everything in your more natural speaking voice or chest voice. And others of you are bass baritones and you pretty much do everything more or less in falsetto voice or head voice. In fact, probably that's the kind of voice barbershop in some ways was created to feature on the tenor spot. But for some of us who are kind of trapped in the middle, we kind of have to face this question. So I want to talk just a little bit about how the voice is made to work. To dramatically oversimplify this, and by the way, if you talk to 7 voice teachers about this terminology, you will get 8 different opinions as to what is what, all right? So I'm going to give you my simplified version of what I understand.
2 of them from Jim.
That's right. Yeah, right. And you do your best with what you got. But basically speaking, there are 2 sets of muscles that work to control our vocal folds to create tone. There is one set of muscles that predominantly is involved in our chest voice. We call it chest voice because that is where the resonance occurs. If you put your hand on your chest and go, you should feel some sense of vibration here. We call it head voice because if you put your hand here and go, you should feel some bit of vibration taking place up there. So there is one set of muscles that predominantly is involved in our normal speaking chest voice. The falsetto voice uses only that top set of muscles. Only that top set, not both sets. So what we want to try to do is to find our head voice. And again, everybody has different terminology. Here's what I mean by that. What I mean by that is a mix of both sets of muscles working together in the proper ratio to create both a full, bright, easily produced resonant tone. That's what I'm talking about. Let me try to illustrate the difference between these different voices. Let's say that I'm doing a vocal exercise and I'm going to over-exaggerate going from chest to falsetto. Did you hear that? Did you hear how airy it was? Did you hear that it disconnected? It's over-exaggerating. All right. The reason it disconnects is because if both sets of muscles are not engaged, then the vocal folds will not fully connect all the way up and down. When they're properly engaged, there is full connection all the way up and down. But when you disconnect those muscles, the vocal folds only touch part of the way, and that air escapes through them. And that's why falsetto has that airy, breathy, kind of hooty tone to it. All right? So what we want to do is figure out a way that we can engage both sets of muscles, finding the right proportion. Maybe it's going to be, for some time, 90% these and 10% these. Then maybe it's going to be more half and half. And then maybe it's going to be 70% these muscles and then 30% here. Finding that right ratio so that we can keep the voice connected. So instead of it going like this, it's going to sound like no discernible. Of course, this time of the night and screaming and hollering all day long, there's going to be some raspiness in there. But you understand, you hear right the difference that I'm talking about. So what we want to find is a way to engage both sets of muscles so that we can have a brilliant connected tone. All right? So, yes.
So when you're at the top of that little demo you just gave,
yes.
You're saying that you're in your chest, partially in your chest voice?
Absolutely correct. It's only a small fraction, as opposed to yeah.
Conversely, at the bottom, you're saying that's in some part head voice?
It is. Otherwise, they would disconnect when I did that glissando. But we're talking about ratios here, proportions. Absolutely.
See, I've always been told to that what you just did is a beautiful example, by the way, of crossing the break. Seamlessly,
Yeah.
effortlessly. But if you're either in one voice or the other.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I will say that, I mean, I'm quite serious when I say you get a bunch of vocal people in here, they'll scream and holler and wrestle around in here about, well, no, technically we would call that the mixed voice as opposed to the head voice, as opposed to the, I don't have time for all that, all right? So I'm going to tell you, that's how it works. You can call it whatever you want, but that's the key thing is connection. That's what we're striving for, connection through our range, okay?
The 2 Lyles went through it, and 2 that died 2 days ago. Joe Lyles, and 2 that were died. Talking about
Okay.
transition.
Yeah, very good. Here's what it really boils down to. Steve Scott, who was a teacher last year, and I think he's here now as a student, he's Adam Scott's brother, uses the illustration of a relay race in which the baton is going to be handed off. And you know, that's the most important part of the relay race, right, is the handoff, as it goes from one to the other. And there's a time where it's just the one, and then they're together, and then it's the other. So what we want to try to do is keep those voices connected as freely as we possibly can, as long as we possibly can. Because that maximizes both the power and brilliance and freedom. All of the things, if you look in the singing category, it says we want freely produced, well-supported, resonant singing. That's what the singing category calls for. So that's what we're trying to accomplish here. Okay? So I hope that at least clears up the mystery of what falsetto is as opposed to the other voice. And then whatever term you use, mixed voice, head voice, whatever, you get the point of what the idea is. All right, so are you ready to go through some vocal exercises that will help you connect your voices? I just feel the palpable sense of energy in here tonight. All right, very good. So if I could only pick one exercise, it would be the lip trill or lip bubble exercise. This exercise does everything right. Now, not everyone can lip bubble effectively. All right, so just... If you cannot lip bubble, sometimes if you do what some of the gentlemen are, raise the cheeks up, it helps take some of the weight off. Very good. So the lip bubble is just one of those simple, ridiculous exercises that puts everything right where it needs to be. It takes exactly the right breath support to keep the lips bubbling without blowing them apart. It has to be properly measured. It makes the voice very free and open, and it puts it in a nice placement as well. So one of the first exercises I would recommend is bubbling. And then what I'm giving you here at the same time is octave, octave and a half, and octave jump. Have any of you all happened to see a book by a guy named Roger Love called Set Your Voice Free? All right. These exercises are in part his. Yeah, absolutely. So, octave exercise will sound like this. Join me. Just a second. Do the top note 4 times. Following? Okay, here we go. Up a half. Now, let me give you one little ridiculous trick that also helps you extend your range. I don't know why this works. It's an optical illusion, I guess. But if you start to feel a little bit of tension and so forth, or like, oh no, I can't go much higher, try doing this one time. For some reason, if you bend over as you go up, it fools your brain into thinking you're not going up as high as you actually are. So this week I've been doing some private voice instruction, and everybody says, oh, I want to increase my upper range. I can't sing past a blank. So I say, all right, let's do this bubble exercise. And then I say, all right, let's start bending forward as we go up. Well, we get to the end of the exercise, these guys are a third or a fifth above what they thought their limit was. Until it happened actually today, I made the mistake of telling the guy what note he just sang, and the next time he couldn't do it, all right? He did it perfectly until I told him what note he just sang, all right? So, yeah. It's a pretty ridiculous looking thing, I know. But that's one great exercise. If you could only do one, and you wanted to pick one exercise that did everything great, do that. Now, if you can't lip bubble, then maybe you can tongue trill. I can't do that. Yeah, I hate you people who can do that. I can't do that. It's pretty similar in what it accomplishes. Yeah.
Mark Holman told me that you can also trumpet if you can't get the lips to flop.
Mm-hmm.
I've got dentures, so
Uh-huh.
I really have a trouble getting enough air past it to make the lips move.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So the bubbling exercise, it gets the front articulator and resonator nice and warmed up. Gives good breath support going. It's a very freely produced hum. So then you start to do this, just moving off of the bubble. Do that with me. Yeah. And then what I would do is I would start going through my vowels like that. Yeah, man, what a great tone you all have here. It's got a lot of ping to it, a lot of resonance at the same time. Really, really good job. So if you can bubble, and not everyone can, but if you can, you already know, if you can do it, that you're doing everything pretty much just right. So that way, if you run across a problem section and you can't sing it correctly, bubble through it. Bubble through it first. If you can bubble and you're doing everything right, then it only stands to reason if I can bring that feel over to the section of music that I've been struggling with. Maybe there's some awkward break or whatever, and bubble through it a few times. Let your body relearn how to engage those muscles to do the bubbling properly and then sing through the same feel. That can help you work through a difficult, challenging section. Now, I bubble a lot to get through difficult passages. Rep them over and over and over again. My poor wife, we have an hour's drive to my congregation, and so many times she has to hear. But it's just you have to work at it. All right? Any questions on the bubbling exercise? Now, also then you can do it octave and a half. So in normal tempo one time, that one sounds like. Slow motion, it's do 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 do. Do that one slowly with me, okay? Great job. Then go up by half. And you get the idea. Excellent, very good. Then a third exercise is an octave jump. So do that one with me. Start back here. Good job, guys. Very good job. Now, with that, one of the key things in that exercise, one of its great values is, if you start with too much vocal weight on the lower octave, you will just not get that upper octave. You might the first few, but not as you keep going up. And it's just a good way to remind yourself, you have to always be thinking ahead in terms of your vocal approach to a line. If you've got a phrase that you're going to sing and it's all one musical phrase, And you know that in that phrase, there's a couple of notes that if you really wanted to belt them out, 90% this, 10% that. But you also know that midway through that, there's a high note, or maybe it's a vowel you struggle with, that you're going to have to treat more like 60-40. Then you've got to do the whole phrase like that. Or else you're going to grind the gears as you go through it. You follow what I'm saying? You can't go, ooh, 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 and it's just never going to work. Never, ever going to work. Ooh, ooh. So I would, maybe if I had a passage like that, find the top note, find the way that I have to approach it to have success. Ooh, and then carry that down to the lowest note. Ooh, and then to the whole phrase. Ooh, instead of ooh, that's too hard. It's too hard, and it doesn't work, and it sounds horrible. I mean, for all those reasons, don't do it like that. All right. So just think ahead and sing the phrase with the vocal quality necessary to do the most, the most difficult part. Does that make sense? I mean, it's not exactly rocket science, right? It's just kind of common sense when you get right down to it. All right, so that's the bubbling exercise. Any questions on that? Yeah.
Do you know any other weird bubbly tricks that affect your voice?
Do I know any other tricks? Do I know any other tricks? Yes, I do. Here's a second trick, all right? This is the word gug. Gug. Now let me explain what the purpose is. Gug, by its very nature, is a very glottal sound. We don't want to sing with a very hard glottal sound. But when you say the word gug, you engage certain muscles that relax your larynx. Kind of put your hands up here. I mean, I can't really feel mine all that great. I got some stuff in the way here. But if you just simply say gug, gug, you kind of feel the larynx relax? Gug. All right. So here's why that's important. When we get up in our range and we try to bring too much muscle up into it, we're using these muscles here, we bring the larynx up with it. And when you bring the larynx up with it, you pinch off everything and you have straight. All right, that's horrible. So we want to train our larynx to relax. And that's what gug does. So on the same exact pattern, gug, 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 gug. Now, two rules in doing this exercise. Do not get louder. Now, I don't mean sing unsupported and meh. I want you to sing a lower level of loud. All right, that's what I'm talking about. But you can't get louder, so it can't sound like this in the upper part. Gug, 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 gug. Gug, 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 gug. No. Gug, 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 gug. All right, you don't get louder. And here's the second thing. You don't go down the back staircase. You go down the front staircase. What do I mean? Have you ever seen a house that has one of those, it has a front staircase that maybe was for the rich people who own the place, and then the back staircase for the
stairway just going up.
Yeah, that's right. So here's what I mean by don't go down the back staircase. Gug, 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 gug. Here's going down the front staircase. Gug, 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 gug. Gug, 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 gug. Do you hear the difference? I mean, does that make sense to everybody? Go down the front staircase. All right, so let's start at gug, 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 gug. Gug, 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 gug. Don't get louder. Gug, 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 gug. Good shot. Gug, 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 gug. Gug, 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 gug. Gug, 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 gug. Good job, guys. Gug, 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 gug. Very good. So you get the idea. You get the idea. And what that's designed to do is simply help retrain these muscles here. That as you go up in your range, the larynx just to stay nice and relaxed. I've heard opera singers say that they even had voice teachers that would take a pencil and lay it on their Adam's apple and keep it from, that's horrible. Don't do it like that. Don't manipulate it externally. That's sort of an internal way just to kind of learn how to relax. Now, the other tip that I gave you would apply as you start going up and you feel tension, do that thing, ga 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 ga, to just kind of play that little mind game. All right, you follow me? Then you would do the octave and a half, same deal, and then octave jump. So let's do the octave jump one, okay? Let's start at ga, 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 ga. Yeah, it's just going to be ga, 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 okay? Ga, 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 ga. Now, pop quiz, hot shots. What's the key thing to remember in the octave jump? All right, you don't want to get louder as you go up. What else is the key thing about your approach to the whole exercise?
Think about being the overtone to the whole.
That's right. Think about how do you approach the upper octave. Ga 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 ga, as opposed to ga ga. Oh, there's trouble there. It's kind of like I used to live, I was telling Doug, I used to live in an apartment with 3 floors, and I didn't have a washer-dryer hookup. So I had to go to the laundromat or a friend's house to do my laundry. Then to carry it, carrying myself up 3 flights was horrible, but then with all of that laundry, and so when you go up a staircase and you've got a bunch of weight, you're just going to be hard-pressed to make it. Get rid of that weight before you even start up the staircase. So when you have big intervals like that, get the weight out of the way before you even start going up. All right, so that's the purpose of the GUG exercise. By all means, if you know a local voice teacher, you verify these exercises with them. They may have a different take or philosophy. I'm sharing with you what's worked for me, and that's all I can tell you. All right, here is a third exercise. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing, what I understand, I have not done it myself, but I do have the Roger Love warm-up tape vocal exercise. If you buy the book, you get the vocal exercise CD. And it's really, really worth it.
It is. I strongly recommend it. The book's $25 maybe. Roger Love, Set Your Voice Free is the name of it. Comes with a CD in the back. And I'll give you a little extra secret. He has exercises for men and women. I do the women's as well as the men's. Mainly because in my quartet, since we don't have a very low lead or bass, the tenor part is just... it's up there. So I just go ahead and do the soprano exercises as well. And the range that he has for them, it's challenging at the end of it. But a lot of it is actually where I end up having to sing a lot. So it's good to just kind of go ahead and work that out. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. All right, now here's a third one. It's the NG exercise. So imagine you're going to sing the word young, very nice and relaxed and open, but you're going to sustain the NG. Young. Now it's not this. Young. It's not that. It's young. Notice how my jaw is totally relaxed. All right, so do that with me. Young. Now that NG sound does a lot of marvelous things. It finds a great placement that is both forward and brilliant, but also requires space to sing it. Young. So do that. Yeah, it just creates all kinds of overtones. So whenever I do warm-ups with our chorus, I say, we can have a young sounding voice by using young, but we can bring decades of heartbreaking middle-aged disappointment to our songs to have emotional impact, so we can get the best of both worlds that way. So, but yeah, young is a great way. So then, use the NG sound for these very same exercises. Young. It's not young. No, it's young. Do that with me. And of course you know these exercises here by now. Now, personally for me, the NG sound has been the single greatest tool to help me keep my voice connected when I have a really difficult phrase. I will sing it on an NG phrase. Like, for example, this past month in Toronto, our very first song actually was for us pretty low. I think it was going to start in, anybody got a pitch pipe on them, on a B flat. Now, my head voice tends to be fairly bright. My chest voice actually tends to be a little bit too dark. So I have to always think that NG placement, particularly in my lower range. So my part was, the barbershop style is the joy of our lives. But the problem was, with my natural lower range, it was kind of dark and muddy. And I couldn't decide, can I just bring more head quality? Can I make this more a 70-30, 50-50, or 30-70 deal? And I decided my best chance for success was more 70-30. For me, and you all understand what I mean by that, right? So for me, that's what was going to work. So I had to do this a lot in the car. I don't know how many times I did this. Million times. There's a million times. I had to create new muscle memory for how to keep that all connected and up there. Just had to do it 100 million times. It's going to be a trillion if I keep exaggerating here. But I mean, you get the idea, right? So the NG, I have found that personally for me to be helpful. For some singers, they may somehow add tension in. Young, and that's going to be counterproductive. It may not work for me. But I'm just telling you, for me, that has worked really well. And so you know the drill here. Now, any question on any of these three exercises so far? I try to do variations of these almost every day. Almost every day. One of those Roger Love exercises, for example, will last about 5 or 6 minutes for each of them. So if I do the man and the woman's version, it's probably about 12 minutes. Pretty good, just on a daily maintenance basis. So if you have a little bit of a commute or something like that, and you can do that. It's like anything else, guys, realistically, that involves muscle. It just has to be trained and disciplined. That is really what it boils down to. There's no magic cure to this. I remember the first time I tried to do a glissando and had about 17 breaks in the octave. You know, it's frustrating. But you just keep working at it, keep retraining your muscles, and then things iron out there a little bit. All right? Can you bear one more exercise? I mean, would it just be so overwhelming that it would say, no more, we just can't take anymore?
I can't take it.
All right, one more. All right. All right, so this is an exercise given to me by Steve Scott. It's the word boom. And the purpose of this exercise is now to work from the top down and bring some of that upper work down into your lower range. So you can pick any pitch. Somebody give me a D, please. Ooh. So we're going to go up to the fifth above that. And we'll try to get everybody an unquestionably like 90-10 head voice. Okay? So, okay. So now let me explain the exercise. It's 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, fa, mi, re, do. And as we do this exercise, the first time, the first 4 notes we want to have in that nice, light head voice, sort of like 90-10. The 5th note we want to gently transition into more chest voice. All right? So it'll sound like this. And it's on the word boom. Why the word boom? Well, Steve explained it to me like this. The oo vowel is like the most natural head voice sound. The boo is a nice forward articulator. Boo, boo, boo. So boo. So it's going to sound like this. Boo. Now, what you might even do is kind of put one hand here and one hand here to remind yourself. Head voice. Boo. Now you're going to go down a half. You're going to do it again, except the next time down, you're going to do 3 notes in head voice, more up here, and then gradually transition into chest the last two.
We're going down a half or 3/8.
We're going, all right, very good. In this case, since we're tuning to the tonal center, it's pretty pure. But very good point, smart Alec. All right, so, so, boom, boom. This time, 2 and more up here, 3 more down here. Easy. Now, we probably started, in your case, as a bass. If you're singing tenor, you're thinking, man, that's going to be 90% this the entire exercise. Absolutely. It's going to depend in large measure on your own natural voice and what you're naturally designed to do. So in your case, you may want to start like on B flat going up to F and then work it down that way. But do you all see how the exercise works? You're learning how to import more of that feel down through your range. All right? So ideally, here's what we want to do. We want to maximize both aspects of what we do as we make the handoff. So that on any given note, let's say, for example, if you look at Bright Was the Night again, pardon me while I fire this thing up one more time. Let me show you what the practical purpose of this is. If you look at the last page again of Bright Was the Night. And let me zoom in here. Now, if you look here at the second to last line, and you look at the last measure, measure 38, notice that the last note for the tenor, as written on the page, is a G. But in the function of the chord, he's actually on a minor third there. It's an E minor chord. All right? So we know then that the rules of balance indicate that the tenor here is going to yield to whoever's on root and fifth. You follow my thinking here? On that G. But if you go to the very next two measures, we have the same note written on paper, but he's on the root of the chord, which is going to require more fullness. So do you see that the premise of doing these exercises is to avoid the old dilemma, which voice do I use? Falsetto or chest voice? Forget all that. It's what proportion of muscles working together do I bring to bear for that chord? So on the case of the G at the end of measure 38, that proportion may be something like 75% here, 25% here, because it's a minor third. It doesn't call for a lot of power. Follow me? But when you go to the very next measure, the same note on paper is now root. That might be 60-40. So the idea is the more you can work all aspects of your range, the more you can work on transitioning your chest voice up, the more you can work on transitioning your head voice down, the more flexibility you have in what you can do. Now, ultimately, you're going to want to choose music that you can do well all through it. Not every tenor has every tool in the belt. For example, if you ever listen closely to Gas House Gang recordings, if there was something that called for a really high, like 90-10 mix, Kip didn't do it. Rich Knight did it. In old school, when Kip sang for old school, Kip is a great full voice tenor. He has a lot of power. He does a lot of 30, 70, 20, 80 kind of singing. All right? But when old school did As Time Goes By, Jack Pinno sang that, not Kip. Don't put yourself in a position that exposes what you can't do. That's the reason why champions always sound so great. I got news for you. They're not always so great. They just pick great music. All right? I'm, tongue-in-cheek. Of course, they're obviously great. But they pick music wisely. So not every tenor is hitting those high D's and E flats at the end of Time Goes By and then is belting out this chord sequence right here in nearly full chest voice. Not every tenor does that. don't think you have to. You find music that allows you to maximize what you can do as a tenor and camouflages what you don't do well. All right, that's what they all do there. Yeah.
One thing that is kind of fun is, I know we've all heard Tim Warwick's CD learning tracks.
Right.
Well, put it on the tenor track and listen to Tim and study how he seamlessly, study where he jumps from one voice to the other, or makes the transition. It's, he's got such control. It's insane.
Yeah, and Tim is certainly a good model to sing by that gets a really good mix going in his voice. I'll tell you, Fred Farrell from Crossroads, if you ever listen closely to a Crossroads performance, they do a lot of stuff that puts the tenor really, really low. And I am envious of him because he seems to be the total package. He can do all that low stuff, he can do posts, and he can do the high stuff. It just seems like he's got them all. He's like in baseball, the 5-tool player. He's a 5-tool tenor right there.
He does like screaming full voice.
He does. It makes you want to go punch him in the throat. Yeah.
I heard he can't read music.
Very well could be. I don't know. But tenor is, I would say, to me, of the 4 parts, if you can't read music, it would be the one that's most intuitive to sing.
Yes.
Because quite honestly, if the other 3 guys are all lined up right, they're kind of singing a lot of... That's why we balance so much to the other guys, because we're simply reinforcing the overtone series as opposed to having to generate it. But we want to be ready when our time comes, right, guys? So that's why we want to keep all of our voice working. Always want to be thinking, what can I do to be a better tenor this year than I was last year? What tool can I put in my belt this year that I didn't have? Yeah.
I don't know that he's here tonight, but there's a guy here that's a tenor that's blind.
Uh-huh. Bill right up here sings. Of course, tenor. Bill sings everything, right, Bill? So, but on his name card, he has tenor. So he knew to choose the part of the angels. Sure. Right here. Yeah. Yeah, he's very, very good. Well, listen, guys. It's 9:05. I think technically we're supposed to end at 9:30. But I've, as one of my teachers in college used to say, when I run out of soap, I quit lathering. So I've just about told you all I know about how to try to be a great tenor. But why don't we take a few minutes? Are there any questions that maybe you came into class with that we haven't touched upon that you would like for us to talk about? Yeah.
I have no power just where my break is, and my break's at middle C.
Okay.
I have struggled for years and years and years to find some exercise when I'm doing Roger Love to allow me to have power, and I think it's mainly fright because I'm not steady on those last 3 notes, like A, B, C,
Right.
maybe a D. It just depends on which day.
Right.
Is there anything that you want to do?
Yes.
to help that?
Yes. I think that, first of all, when you're trying to get more power in your upper range, don't think about power first. Think about placement first. And here's what I mean by that. If we were talking today in your voice lesson, if you were going to go start a new weightlifting regimen, and you think, I think I can bench press 250 pounds, but I haven't benched in a long time, you would not immediately put 250 pounds on there. You'd maybe not even put anything on. Get under there and make sure your technique is right. And then you think about starting to add more. So when you've got a situation like that, the first thing you want to do is make sure that your approach is basically right, that the fundamental musculature is working properly. So in that situation, what I would do is these very exercises, particularly bubbling. And once you know that you can sing that in a connected way, it's not going, it's, once you're doing it right, lightly, then it's just a matter of learning how to energize with air. But I'm not doing that here. I'm doing that, as you could probably obviously tell, with this right here is where I'm doing it. But what I'm first focusing on is the technique. Then I use air, the air pressure, to get the more of the power. But it's placement and proper technique is what I would suggest. Yeah, other questions? Anything we didn't cover you'd like for us to talk about? Yeah.
Trying to face the question. Okay, so I am primarily now sing bass. I used to sing tenor a lot more often.
Right.
And I find that the more often I sing bass, my tenor voice is becoming more inconsistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm having trouble keeping it consistent because I'm not asked to sing tenor anymore. I'm asked to sing bass because apparently I sing bass a lot better than
Right.
I do tenor.
Right.
But I like singing tenor because I can sing tenor all night and not hurt myself.
Right.
I'm just wondering if there are any tips to, having the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. What it really is boiling down to, quite honestly, if you think of these